What up, motherfucks? It's your boy, the hater, back in your motherfucking life. You know what I'm saying? I ain't going nowhere. So here's the video for today, all right? This is one of my favorite videos that I've done during Hater Mania, for sure, even though I haven't recorded it yet, because as you can hear me speak, that's how it's getting recorded. But it's going to be one of my favorites, I already know. Today's video is going to be about who is the greatest wrestler of all time. Now, it's important to distinguish a few things. Number one, right, this is a subjective question, right? So, for example, for some people, the best wrestler of all time is Kurt Angle because they really like, athleticism and in-ring, bravado, right? In-ring ability, I should say. For others, it might be, I don't know, Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan because they really like that showmanship, right? Or John Cena, right? For many others, it might be someone who's good at something else. Someone who's very, very charismatic, let's say, like The Rock. Different people will give different answers, and that's fine. Because we are entitled to have our subjective opinions about who the best wrestler of all time is. Right? Now, with that being said, people have debates about this, right? Because people tend to try to convince each other that they're right. Not just about wrestling, but about everything, So someone might be like, well, I think Christian's better. And someone might counter by saying, no, he's not better because The Rock, won more titles than him, right? Now, in every debate about who the GOAT is, not just in wrestling, but in all types of debates that involve finding out who the best person at that thing is, there's always a range of acceptable answers, right? So, for example, in basketball, there's plenty of really good basketball players that are not in the range of being considered the best of all time, right? So, for example, John Stockton, I believe, is the best point guard in the history of basketball. And he's the best point guard by a lot. But for some reason, he's not in the conversation of being the best of all time. You know what I mean? Same thing with a few other great ones. Like, let's see. Kobe Bryant, I would argue, is no longer in that conversation. I mean, he's in there. He's like a top 10. Or like Shaq or like Tim Duncan, right? In reality, the acceptable answers for best of all time in basketball as it stands are either Michael Jordan or LeBron James, right? That's it. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those two. Periodically, if you have this debate with your friends, someone will come out of left field and be like, I think the best player of all time is Dirk Nowitzki. You're like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Oh, I actually think it's Tayshaun Prince. Go fuck yourself, This happens with a lot of things. Try to have a conversation with anybody about who the best rapper is. Someone is going to come out of nowhere and be like, it's Talib Kweli. Shut the fuck up. No, it isn't. You know what I'm saying? It fucking isn't. It's like you may like Talib Kweli, but he is not in the acceptable range of people that might be the best of all time. And here it is, motherfuckers. I acknowledge, for example, that my favorite wrestler, Christian, is not in that range either. You know what I mean? I understand that if people are having a conversation about who's better, who's the best of all time, The Rock or Hogan, let's say, right? And I'm like, I think it's Christian. I understand how that sounds, right? It sounds pretentious. It sounds smarky, right? But it is my opinion. And that's the important distinction that I want to make here. It's okay to have your opinion be whatever it is. If you think John Stockton is the best of all time, then so be it, motherfuckers. So be it. The problem becomes when people try to objectively determine who is and who isn't, right? So, for example, in basketball, you can look, or soccer, or any other sport, you can look at people's Wikipedia pages, right? And it'll say, this person is considered to be the greatest player of all time, or at least his generation, right? In soccer, this gets really specific. You might find someone like Robin Van Persie, right? And it'll say something like, many consider Van Persie to be the best striker of his generation and one of the best strikers in the history of the EPL or in the history of Netherlands, let's say, right? So it's all right, basically that means that there are people that believe this, this is a widely held belief, if we were to believe what Wikipedia says. Now, unlike real sports, wrestling is different because wrestling, the popularity of someone is weighed much, 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 much more than their actual skills. At the end of the day, LeBron James, like David Beckham, for example, is more popular than, Lewandowski, right? But he's not a better player than Lewandowski. You know what I mean? David Beckham is inferior to Lewandowski as a soccer player. In the list of all-time greats, I would put Lewandowski above him. But that doesn't matter because it's not a popularity contest, right? It's about who puts more balls in the net. In wrestling, however, since it's not a real sport, we have to really lean hard on popularity. We have to really lean hard on other elements that make wrestling and wrestlers interesting. So now, to answer the question, with a source, motherfuckers, who is the greatest wrestler of all time. Frankly, who is widely regarded as the greatest wrestler of all time. And that's a direct fucking quote, motherfucks. Quote, this person, well actually maybe that part's not a quote, but widely regarded as the greatest wrestler of all time. So you're probably scratching your heads right now, some of you scratching your balls, thinking to yourselves, who could the hater be talking about? Who could be this guy that is widely regarded as the best wrestler of all time? Could it be Hulk Hogan? Could it be John Cena? Could it be The Rock or Stone Cold? Maybe it's Triple H. You're probably all thinking, who could it be, right? Well, I'm here to tell you, motherfucks, that the answer to this question that has been plaguing us for a long time as to who is the greatest wrestler of all time, or certainly who is widely regarded as the greatest professional wrestler of all time, the answer to this question is, drum roll please, motherfucks. That's right. Kenta Kobashi, motherfucks. Kenta Kobashi was the answer we were looking for. According to Wikipedia, Kenta Kobashi is a Japanese retired professional wrestler. Quote, widely regarded as the greatest professional wrestler of all time, he started his career in All Japan Pro Wrestling. Pause, motherfucks. Pause. This Wikipedia article would have you and would have me believe that Kenta Kobashi is widely regarded as the best wrestler of all time. Now, there are so many things wrong with this. Number one, Kenta Kobashi didn't even wrestle in New Japan. He wrestled in All Japan, which I believe is like the jobber league. Like, they're not the number one company. They're at most the second biggest company. Probably not even that. Then he left and wrestled for Pro Wrestling Noah, which is like the butt of every joke. You know what I'm saying? Pro Wrestling Noah hasn't produced one WWE star. They've signed a lot of people from there. They signed like whatever, TM12 or whatever. Or the fucking, those motherfuckers are called. You know what I'm talking about? The Mighty Don't Kneel, those jackasses. They got Bronson Reed in NXT, he's from there. Kenta, of course, is from there. You know, a bunch of, the other Kenta, by the way, I know some of you may be thinking, Kenta Kobashi, oh, do you mean the guy from NXT? No, motherfuckers, that's Kenta Kobayashi. That was supposed to be the next Kenta, basically. Like, I think he was taught by this other Kenta, and that this new current Kenta is the guy that went to WWE, failed completely, now has like cotton candy colored hair, and is wrestling Dean Ambrose for like the fourth most important title in New Japan. You know what I mean? That's what's happening here. Arguably the fifth or maybe even sixth most important title. You know, let's call it like it is, right? That's where we are at now, motherfucks. That's where we are at. Where someone went on Wikipedia and added that Kenta Kobashi is considered one of the best wrestlers of all time. That is a bold-faced lie. Another issue that I have with this is the term widely regarded. First of all, no one even regards this guy as a wrestler. Nobody knows who the fuck this guy is, right? So to even say that someone like Kenta Kobashi has any kind of mainstream worldwide appeal, since wrestling is a worldwide sport, is ridiculous. If you go to India, one of the biggest wrestling markets, right, you'll find a few Indian neckbeards, of course, that watch All Japan Pro Wrestling. But the vast majority of them are going to know the Great Khali, and they're not going to know Kenta Kobashi. But if you go to Japan, I still believe more people are going to know the Great Khali than Kenta Kobashi. Now, some of you may know I've been to Japan, motherfucks. They don't call me the Nightmare of Shibuya for no reason, you know? I've been there, wrestling, and I was there for quite some time, and I hung out with a lot of Japanese people. From what I gather, wrestling is not this popular sport. You know, I went to the New Japan Pro Wrestling, like, souvenir shop, basically, right? It was like a room, it was a tiny, tiny room, and they just sold like a few t-shirts. It wasn't anything impressive, you know? It wasn't this big money store, it was empty, I was the only one there. I was there for like an hour, I was the only one there. You know what I mean? So the facts are what the facts are. Wrestling isn't big in Japan. So if the Japanese don't consider him to be the best wrestler of all time, then who does, motherfucks? Who does? The neckbeard community of the United States and Canada? That's gotta be it? I can't think of anybody else that would give a flying fuck. So here we are. Here we are as it stands. We are meant to believe that this guy, who never wrestled even for the number one promotion in Japan, sure as shit didn't wrestle for the number one promotion in the world, the WWE, didn't even wrestle for WCW, and he is widely regarded as the best wrestler of all time. Now, ain't that the dumbest shit you ever heard in your life, motherfucks? Now, again, if some neckbeard goes out there and argues, hey, Kenta Kobashi is the best wrestler of all time, hey, be my guest. Have an opinion. I don't give a fuck, man. Have your opinion. But when you start saying shit like widely regarded, right? That's when things get a little bit iffy, motherfucks. That's when we have to enter into that analogy that I used a few minutes ago, the basketball analogy. You know, you can have a civil and normal debate of reasonable people. Be like, oh, who's better, Kobe Bryant or LeBron? LeBron or Michael Jordan, right? And then someone's like, I think B.J. Armstrong was actually the best ever. You know what I mean? That's the problem right there. That's the problem right there, motherfucks. And you can substitute this for any sport. Oh, I don't think that like Messi and Ronaldo are the best. No way, man. I think it's Axel Witsel from like fucking wherever the fuck he plays now. You know what I mean? No, motherfuckers. You have to be reasonable, right? You have to be reasonable if you want to make the claim that he is widely regarded as such. You know, I don't know why people would even have an opinion that doesn't conform to the facts. You know, it's very strange. Like I have the opinion that Christian is the best wrestler of all time, but because I believe that he was severely held down, you know what I mean, at the time when he shouldn't have been. You know, he's had a great career otherwise, but they held him down at the time where he should have been pushed. You know, and that argument can only really take form in wrestling, because in wrestling there's other forces. In other sports, there are no other forces. In other sports, it's you go out there and you perform. If you can perform, you're going to be good and you're going to be paid for it. You know, it's as simple as that. So long story short, motherfucks, long story shorter than a mug. The world, according to Wikipedia, which I think serves as the ultimate answer to the question of, can Wikipedia be a trusted source? The answer is obviously not. The world seems to believe, according to Wikipedia, that the greatest wrestler of all time is Kenta Kobashi. I guarantee you, motherfucks, if you go to WrestleMania, which is undoubtedly the #1 wrestling event of the year every year, right? It's the one that draws the most people. It's the one that gets the most interest. If you were to go to WrestleMania on a year not like this one, but a year with a full crowd, and you ask the 100,000 people, let's say, who the fuck is the best wrestler of all time? No one would say Kenta Kobashi. Not one person. Now let's say that you have a crowd where there's a lot more neckbeards than usual. And let's say a few of them say it, right? Do you believe in any scenario that it would be more than 1,000 people? Abso-fucking-lutely not. Do you believe in any scenario that it would be more than 50,000 people? Because in my opinion, when someone says widely regarded, that means that more than half of the people must believe this person is the greatest wrestler of all time. Because it didn't even say widely regarded to be one of the best wrestlers of all time. No, motherfucks. This Wikipedia entry didn't even say that. It just said widely regarded as the greatest professional wrestler of all time. Like, imagine the arrogance in that statement. You know, I would never say Christian is widely regarded as the best wrestler of all time. And I believe that if you ask those 100,000 people, more people would say Christian than they would fucking say Kenta Kobashi. Primarily because nobody knows who the fuck this guy is. You know, this is preposterous. To suggest that Kenta Kobashi is better than Undertaker is retarded. Anyone that believes that is not a smart person. It's the same shit. It's the same shit as that Dave Meltzer attitude, that Dave Meltzer logic. You know, you have these motherfucks, you have these people that are like, that wrestle for like 2 decades in WWE, and according to this cocksucker, none of them have a 5-star match. And then you want me to believe that at the G1 climax, like 2 Japanese guys that no one's ever heard of, that have no distinguishable moves, that have no distinguishable characters, that these guys put on like several 5-star matches during like the 1-month span of this tournament? Like, more 5-star matches existed in this tournament than did in an entire decade of WWE, which included matches involving The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair. Like, really, people actually believe that Oka from New Japan versus, like, I don't know, fucking Sonata from TNA. Remember Sonata from TNA? They think that when Sonata entered TNA, by the way, that's when I stopped watching TNA. That one time when Bound for Glory was like a collaboration between, you know, TNA and like Wrestle One or some shit. Who the fuck cares? What a waste of time that was. But anyways, I think after that, like, I ordered that pay-per-view, And then after that Thursday or whatever, I didn't watch Impact, and I haven't watched since. I don't think I've watched one episode since then. So think about that. Sonata and like Oka or whatever the two other jabrones have had a better match according to Dave Meltzer than people like HBK and Undertaker. Really, motherfuckers? Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels is not as good of a match as Johnny Gargano versus Andrade? Really? That is fucking horseshit, and you all know it. It is the same mentality that has led us to the pinnacle of stupidity, that Kenta Kobashi is the greatest wrestler of all time. Now that we got this video out of the way, motherfucks, tonight I'm excited. Tonight it's Elimination Chamber. I'm looking forward to this motherfucker. Now, problem with this is this. A lot of people seem to be under the impression, myself included in many ways, that it's going to be Edge versus Roman Reigns. I agree. One of my fans, or maybe just a person who watched the video, commented and said, bro, it's clear that it's going to be Edge versus Roman Reigns. I agree that it's clear. However, I refuse to believe that that's the main event of WrestleMania. That makes no sense. Edge on SmackDown makes no sense. Furthermore, if we don't see Edge versus Orton, I'm not dying to see Edge versus Orton. Don't get me wrong. I'm not dying to see Edge versus Orton. I mean, I think we should, because Randy Orton injured him at the greatest wrestling match of all time, and a random Raw match doesn't do it justice. Right? If we don't see Randy Orton versus Edge, this leads to the possibility, the worst case scenario, if you ask me, that at WrestleMania we're going to see Randy Orton versus The Fiend or some other Bray Wyatt incarnation. If that happens, motherfucks, there is a chance that day I will not watch that WrestleMania. Because if that's like one of the main events or something, I'm not watching it. Sure as shit. If they make the mistake, let's say they do like a double WrestleMania, where they split it into two, and the match ends, right? I mean, the night ends, and the main event of night one, let's say, is Randy Orton versus The Fiend. I'm turning it off. I don't give a fuck. I'm turning it off before the match starts. I have zero desire to watch Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania again. So that's why it's got to be Orton versus Edge. Nothing else makes sense. There you go. For that reason, and the fact that we have the SmackDown Elimination Chamber match, and the winner of that wrestles Roman tonight, I think just that right there is enough to suggest that Roman Reigns is not going to wrestle Edge at WrestleMania, but is going to wrestle the winner of tonight's Elimination Chamber. That's my personal opinion. Now, I understand why it looks like he's going to wrestle Edge, but I just hope it's not the case. More so than I believe it's not the case, I hope it's not the case. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, motherfuckers, who cares, right? Doesn't matter who Roman Reigns is going to wrestle. Doesn't matter who Edge is going to wrestle, because the greatest wrestler of all time is not wrestling on the card tonight. And as we've just learned from this video, the greatest wrestler of all time, widely regarded as such, is none other than motherfucking Kenta Kobashi. Not to be confused with Kenta Kobayashi, who is one of the greatest flops in the history of wrestling. There you go, motherfuckers. There you go. Maybe if WWE was smart, they would have had Kenta Kobashi come to WWE and main event WrestleMania 20 against The Rock. That's the only thing that would have made sense. You know what I'm saying? Or maybe WrestleMania 17. I don't know, motherfuckers. Maybe WrestleMania 18. I don't know. Any one of those could have been saved by Kenta Kobashi. And yet here we are, motherfuckers. Here we are. So with that, see you guys tomorrow up in this motherfucker.